Hey guys, welcome to the channel. This is BMF DIY and I'm Brooks.
Woo! My ninja skills come in handy all the time.
Alright, so for a radon mitigation system, there's a couple of different ways that you can go about mitigating the radon. Typically, they'll core drill a hole through the corner of the slab somewhere, and basically the concept is to get air movement from the bottom of the slab up and out through the top of the house. So you can either core drill somewhere or anywhere in the floor, or you can use a sump system like this. And the really nice thing about mine, you can see that there's a gap between the concrete and the top of the sump. So that means that we'll be able to pull a vacuum across that layer below the slab, so we'll be able to pull that air out and up. If your pit was kind of sealed to the concrete, it would make that a little more challenging. But this will actually work really good. And you can also see that there's a drain right there that will funnel water into it. So we'll be able to get a lot of the radon mitigated that way. So this is a piece from Jackel. I actually bought this off of Amazon. And it's a really sturdy piece. It's got a gasket. You can see where the lid fastens to the top here. The only place where you'll have to put your own sealant is between the flange and the concrete. And I've got mine anchored down really well with concrete anchors all the way around. So then I'll go around and I'll actually seal up all of these holes here around to the concrete. Your goal is to make sure you get a good seal so that it pulls a good vacuum. That way it's pulling all of that radon out from underneath the slab. So that was step one, is getting this installed. Next, we'll get the lid on and start running our piping, and we'll go from there. Hey, welcome to another glorious episode of BMF DIY. I am Brooks, and today we're going to talk about radon mitigation. Now, in our last episode, you saw me work on a sump pump install, and the whole purpose of that sump pump install was so that we could install this sump cover and also do radon mitigation with the same setup and not have to core drill through the floor. So if you haven't seen that video, I'll throw a link up here, but this cover is made by Jackel, and the thing I love about it is all of these pieces and flanges you get, so you can adapt it to whatever you need it to do. And this is a very sturdy cover. It's made of some thick, I'm sure it's a polycarbonate type of material, but as you can see, we've got the sump pump installed already, working, wired up, and then we've got this port right here, which is designed for radon mitigation. Now, if you don't know much about radon is a gas that's roughly 8 times heavier than air. So if you can envision radon sitting in your basement, it would be like a liquid because it's heavier than air. So it's going to be sitting wherever it is. Now, the radon on this particular house was at 35 parts per million. I can't remember the exact, but around 4 is where you want it to be. So it's very high in this house. Now, since we're going to finish this basement, I don't want to put more holes in the basement somewhere else that I've got to try to cover. I don't want to do that. We want as much open space as we can, so I opted for this system here. Now, when using this Jackel, there is a gasket between the lid and the base of it, but there is not a gasket between the base and the concrete. So what I did is I hammer drilled some holes, and I anchored it down, and then I will go around and seal the base of it to the concrete so we get an actual airtight seal. One thing I'm going to do initially, though, once we get the system running, is to let it run without sealing anything up so that any levels of radon that are in the basement get drawn out into the atmosphere before we seal everything up, because I don't want to trap any of the radon gas that's already in this house here. So what we're going to do is put this together. There's a couple of holes here and there on this system that we're going to leave open. That way it can draw all of that air out of the basement, all that radon gas out of the basement prior to us sealing it up. So first things first, though, is getting this installed. Again, if you want to see more in depth on doing that, take a look at our sump pump video that we did. That one kind of explains that in more detail. This, we're just going to talk about the radon mitigation system itself. So this is our port. We're going with 3-inch, so it's a 3-inch male fitting to 3-inch PVC. We're going to use that. And then we're just going to go PVC up, out to the outside of the house. The other thing that we need to talk about before we get going too much on this project is the radon mitigation itself, right? So mitigation means to get rid of, in layman's terms, and you do that with a fan. So these radon fans, this one is from Radon Away. These fans are all rated by how much CFM they can flow, and that's basically airflow, right? So this one is 166 CFM, and you can get them in a wide range of CFM, but the main thing is getting one that's going to eliminate enough gas. Now this one was about 180 bucks, I believe, and this one will flow more air. And since we have very high radon values in this house and there's never been any mitigation in it, I wanted to make sure that I got something that was able to flow more air in case we need it. So we're in Colorado, and the need for radon mitigation in Colorado is very high. So that's kind of the purpose of this. So we have our fan here, and this thing is very basic. It's just a blower motor in here, nothing fancy. And what you'll do is install this on your line so that it can suck all that air out. They're not terribly loud, but they suggest that you put these in the attic or outside so that you don't hear any of the noise from these fans. Now, it's not that terribly important where you put this, but I would suggest putting it somewhere that's serviceable. Attics are a good place for these, but I don't want to have to crawl and get to it. The other thing is that they suggest you mount it like this. That's really not terribly critical in my opinion, but mounting it sideways is not a good idea. We're going to end up mounting this one probably right here. It's kind of going to be, we're going to come straight up, go into the fan, and then it's going to go right out the house. Now the other thing you want to think about is airflow. You don't want to have a ton of bends, 90s, tight radiuses like that, because that will cause you to have decreased airflow. Now this is going to end up being finished and insulated, so I'm not worried about hearing the noise from the fan. Mainly I wanted it in an easy to access area, so that's why we're putting it here. So if you have any more questions on radon fans, put them in the comments below. We're going to get to installing this. We're going to start installing our PVC, and then we will test the system after we're done and see what our results are. The two other things to talk about with a radon mitigation system before we get going too far are monitoring the radon system. Now this Radon Away kit, this one came with this, it's basically a radon system monitor. You're measuring the amount of suction that you get on the system, just to make sure that it's actually working. If you're not getting any suction, and you're going to measure that between where you're pulling the air out of and where the fan is, if you're not getting good suction, then it's not going to do its job as well as it should. So that's what this guy's for. There's instructions on how to install it. So this guy is good to have to monitor the system. And the other thing that we want to talk about is, where do you exit your radon mitigation system? So a long time ago, it used to be okay to just vent it at ground level right outside the house. But the EPA came in and said, that's not okay. You have to vent it at least 3 foot above the roof and 10 foot away from any window. The purpose of that is it's so somebody doesn't accidentally inhale any radon, or so you don't have kids playing around it, because again, that gas is heavier than air, so it's going to sink. And the other issue is that if you do exit that right at ground level, you can run into issues where it's coming right back in through the substrate underneath the house, and you're just creating a vicious cycle. of recirculating that gas rather than getting rid of it and also pulling that new gas out and getting rid of it too. So there's a couple of tips there. So now we're going to get started in the install. And we are going with 3-inch on this system, and our fan is a 4-inch. So make sure that if you are doing something similar to this, you do get some couplers that can reduce this. Now we are going to use some rubber couplers on this because these fans do go bad over time. It is just a motor and eventually they'll wear out. So if you use rubber couplers, it's a lot easier to disconnect this from the system and replace it without having to cut PVC and glue and whatever. And I'll show you our little kit. So I actually bought couplers that came with another kit or another measuring kit so that you can actually have a spare one of these if you ever break it. But the rubber couplers just look like that. And I actually opted for some white ones so it matched with our system. What I like to do is get a piece of straight pipe where I'm going to run it put in. Since we're going to come out of that sump cover and 45 and then come up a 90, we're going to have a straight piece right here, so I'm going to run it so I can position my 90 and then measure for where my 45 is going to be. That way the angle is correct. Now I'm just using some of this stuff for strapping that bigger 3-inch line, and it works really good. So there's our 90 on right there, and again I'm going to put our radon fan probably right in this general vicinity here. It puts us in close proximity to a GFCI that we've already got in place, so we don't have to run one. At PVC, it is a good idea to make sure you deburr the edges and chamfer them a little bit. Piece that I cut, and again I'm not gluing it yet, I'm just kind of setting in here to check fitment so that I know that we are where we want to be. So it looks pretty good. And then our radon fan will be right here, kind of mounted at an angle. And the only reason I did that is so that it wasn't mounted straight on top of the sump. I could have done that too, but it is what it is. So we'll do this. We'll have our fan here, and what I'm going to do is just use another straight piece to simulate where I want my 45 to go. But we're pretty close to getting some stuff glued together and getting things working. Alright, I skipped ahead to past the boring stuff. I got the pipes installed. I've got some supports going. I've actually got the radon fan plugged in. And we're actually moving a really, really good amount of air, which is awesome. So let me show you what we came up with here. So there's the pipe coming out of the sump. There's our radon fan installed there. And we come up here and 90 and go straight outside. Now, in the essence of time, since it is about 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning, I ran the pipe outside. So that's the one thing that's kind of tricky, is drilling a hole through the side. You got to get a drill up in usually it's in a bad spot, but drilled a 4-inch hole for the 3-inch pipe, and the flange of the 90 going up fit perfect. So I just put a 90 going straight up, and then I stuck a couple of coupling or a couple of 45s on it loose just to direct the air out to the side, so if it rains tonight it won't get in it. Tomorrow I will end up putting the rest of it on, go straight up the side of the house, and then again, you have to be 3 feet above the roof, but 10 feet from any window. And it's a good idea to put a rain cap on of some sort. There's a bunch of them available out there. But this is where we end up. You can see there's a support, there's another support there, another support there, and if you listen close, the fan's running right now. I'll get closer and see if you can hear this. So it's running, and you can barely hear that. Very happy with it. And you can see I supported the fan there and there just to make sure I didn't have a bunch of weight sitting on that pipe. A couple of things left to do. Like I mentioned, I've got to finish running the pipe up the side of the house so that I am within the EPA's code of installation, so that it's above the roof line and no kids are going to be huffing the radon fumes. I'm not sure why they would, but whatever. The other thing that we've got to do is install this manometer. So this is going to give us a reading. How about I take that out of the package for you? But this manometer is going to give us a reading on the vacuum that is in this line, and you want to put it between between the fan and where it's suctioning from. So that's what we're going to do. And this says select a location on the vertical suction pipe where the vacuum gauge is to be mounted. Fix the gauge vertically to the pipe using the screws provided. Remove the caps from both ends. Warning: do not ingest the gauge fluid. If you get hungry, don't eat the fluid. And it says drill a 3/16 hole in the piping 2 inches below the top of the gauge. So first things first, we'll install the gauge. I'm going to put it right there. And you put this tube into the top of here. Our gauge mounted, we've got our tube in, which is a giant pain in the butt, mind you. And we've got our tube in here also. We're going to plug our fan in and see what we've got. Well, so we can tell we've got a vacuum on it. That much I know, but I also know that it's not sealed up very well yet. So our vacuum's only going to get better. Keep in mind that with this sump cover here, you have to, give you guys a better shot, you have to seal around the base of it, which I haven't done yet, and you also have to seal or fill any of the holes that are in there, yada yada. So there's a few more things that I still have to do on it, but like I said before, I'm going to let this run for a week before I do anything else, so that I can get any radon that is pooled in the basement down here out of the house. So that's my goal. Let it run for a week. We'll see how it does. And then I'm going to do a radon test, and then I'll seal everything up, and we'll do another test, and then we'll see how everything goes. Again, this does not measure the radon in the house. This measures the suction on this line. So if something happens, like let's say your fan gets unplugged or trips or something, you'll see that both of those even out. So the other thing to note on this gauge is that you want to make sure that when you install this, your fluid level is at 0. Then when you plug it in, you'll be able to get a good reading of where your actual vacuum is. So mine's right about, if we're going 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm at like half. So gives you a good idea of where you're at, and then if anything ever does happen, this will be able to tell you how much suction you have or don't have. So like I said, I'm going to do another test again after I get everything sealed. I'm going to see how much more of a suction I get on the system. The last thing that I wanted to show you guys is the wiring on the fan. So let's go over that. So before we call this all done, just wanted to go over the wiring here. Now the fan doesn't come with the cord on it. I bought this separate. It was a couple of bucks on Amazon. So if you want a cord that you can plug in along with it, you can grab that. It's very, very simple. Black to black, white to white, green to green. You get wire nuts in the kit. And then you can stuff everything in here nicely. And then the fan comes with a little cover that goes over here, just like that. That's pretty much it for the electrical, guys. There's not a whole lot else to see. Well, hopefully you learned some good things about radon mitigation. I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate you watching the video. If you guys want to follow me on any sort of social media, there's links in the description below. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. Don't be afraid to follow me, ask some questions, or just say, hey, what's going on? Thanks again, guys. I appreciate you being here, and we will catch you on the next video. Have a good day.